The storm struck without warning, a fierce Montana squall that turned the vast prairie sky into a roiling black curtain of wind and dust. Nate Walker braced against the gale, one hand clutching the barn's doorframe, the other straining to secure the latch. Inside, the cattle lowed restlessly, their calls heavy with fear. For a fleeting moment, Nate feared the wind might rip the roof clean off, threatening not just his livestock but the foundation of the life he'd built over 5 grueling years. This ranch was his defiance against the lonely silence of a land too vast for one man. Now, with the storm clawing at his world, he wondered if the land was testing him again. When the winds eased, Nate staggered into his house, dust coating his hair, chest heaving. He sank into the oak chair at his desk, and there it was, a letter sealed with red wax, bearing the Whitaker crest. He'd read it twice that morning, but its words lingered like a weight. Rose Whitaker, a bride promised to him. The arrangement, struck with unsettling speed by Silas Whitaker, a man Nate knew only by reputation, felt off. No talk of dowry, no probing questions, just eager acceptance. Nate folded the letter, unease twisting in his gut. In 2 days, a wagon would bring Rose down the road that vanished into the hills, a woman who would become his wife by law and promise. It should have felt like triumph, proof his ranch held value. Yet doubt gnawed at him. He remembered her from 3 years ago at the Miles City General Store. Among the Whitaker daughters, Rose stood apart, not like Lydia, poised and polished, or Florence, charming merchants with practiced ease. Rose had knelt in the dirt, tending a wounded dog, her dress stained with blood and mud. Her sisters mocked her, her mother scolded, but Rose's hands were steady, tearing her petticoat to bind the animal's leg. Her quiet courage, ignoring ridicule to do what was right, had stayed with Nate, a rare honesty in a world of pretense. Meanwhile, at the Whitaker homestead, whispers circled a wooden table. Silas held the same letter, his wife, Elenina, smiling thinly. Lydia and Florence leaned in, their voices sharp with glee. A prosperous rancher, Elenina said, and far enough to rid us of her meddling. Lydia noted Nate's wealth, Florence laughed at Rose's ignorance. Silas's jaw tightened as he glanced toward Rose, feeding broth to her dying grandmother. She's a curse, he muttered. Always questioning, Henderson's deal, the banker's son, Morrison's nephew. She costs us everything. Elenina agreed, marriage would bury Rose's troublesome truths. Unbeknownst to them, Rose overheard from the hallway, her heart splintering. A burden, a curse, they'd always seen her as such. She slipped away, trembling, vowing not to break. In town, Caleb Harlan watched from his law office, sharp eyes noting the rider who delivered Nate's letter. Rose had once exposed his deceit, costing him a lucrative deal. Now, as she was sent to Nate, Caleb's smile grew. Revenge could wait years, and he'd ensure her new life brought no peace. The wagon arrived Thursday at sunset. Rose stepped down, her plain dress dusty, her eyes wary but resolute. Nate offered his hand, his grip firm yet gentle. "Miss Whitaker," he said. "Mr. Walker," she replied, voice steady. Inside, the ranch house smelled of stew and wood smoke, its simple warmth easing her chill. They ate in silence, Nate's gaze curious but kind. "Your family called you practical," he said, breaking the quiet. "But I remember something else. 3 years ago, you saved that dog. That was courage." Rose flushed, the memory of shame reframed as strength. "You remember that?" she asked softly. "I remember thinking you were worth knowing," he said, his eyes holding hers. That night, Rose lay in the small bedroom, Nate's words, courage, honesty, clashing with her family's cruelty. Hope flickered, but fear lingered. Was Nate's kindness genuine, or did he want her for her family's secrets? In town, Caleb spun lies at the saloon, whispering that Rose was cast out, a troublemaker. The seeds of rumor took root. Days passed in a fragile rhythm. Nate worked the ranch, Rose learned its routines, stoking fires, mending clothes. Their evenings were quiet, filled with small talk of cattle and weather, the silence between them softening into possibility. But tension grew. Tools vanished, gates were left open, cattle spooked at night. Nate's jaw tightened with suspicion, though he spoke little of it. Rose sensed a shadow, likely Caleb, nursing his grudge. One night, chaos erupted. Cattle stampeded under a thin moon, their hooves thundering as a broken fence set them free. Nate grabbed his rifle, shouting for Rose to stay inside, but she followed, heart pounding. In the dust and madness, she spotted a figure, someone urging the herd into panic. "Nate," she cried, pointing. He raised his rifle, but the figure fled. Together, they herded the cattle, Rose calming a charging steer with a steady voice, her courage startling even herself. By dawn, the herd was safe, but exhaustion and fear remained. Townsmen arrived, drawn by the noise, Caleb among them, his false concern masking malice. "Trouble follows her," he sneered, eyeing Rose. "Cast out for a reason." The crowd murmured, doubt spreading. But Nate stepped forward, voice like iron. "She's my wife. She saved the herd while you skulked in the shadows. She's no curse, she's my strength." Caleb's smile faltered as the crowd's mood shifted. "Go home, Harlan," Nate said coldly. Caleb retreated, but his eyes promised more. Back at the ranch, Nate pulled Rose close. "Let them talk. I know you." She leaned into him, relief mingling with dread. Caleb wouldn't stop. The next morning, a rider brought news. Caleb was spreading lies in town, calling Rose cursed, blaming her for Nate's troubles. They rode to confront him, Rose's hands trembling but her resolve firm. Outside the saloon, Caleb spun his tale to a crowd. "Walker's ruined by her," he said, smirking. "Her family dumped her for a reason." Nate's voice cut through. "I'd stake my future on her again. She's no liar, she's the reason my herd's alive." Rose stepped forward, her voice clear. "My family cast me out because I spoke truth they couldn't bear. If that makes me unfit for them, it makes me more than fit for this life." The crowd stirred, some nodding, others murmuring agreement. Caleb's lies unraveled as ranchers recalled her bravery. "Fools," he spat, but the tide had turned. He stalked away, defeated but not finished. That evening, Nate and Rose stood on the porch, stars bright above. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Only that it took so long to find where I belong," she said, leaning into him. His arm tightened around her, a promise unspoken. The ranch stretched before them, wild and demanding, but no longer empty. Caleb's shadow lingered, his vengeance unspent, but together, Nate and Rose had faced lies and sabotage and stood firm. Whatever storms lay ahead, they'd meet them side by side, their love rooted in truth, strong enough to weather any trial.